you look at like countries like China, Cuba, the USSR and things like that, most of what Americans know about those countries doesn't even come from the news. Most of what Americans know about those countries comes from like spy movies where there are the
Yes.
cartoonish depictions of like
Mhm.
different countries around the world. And like when it comes to understanding other countries, the easiest way to rip the Band-Aid off is to just look at the numbers. If like, think about it, right? The United States has the largest prison population in the world.
Mhm.
If China was jailing all of their the political opposition, right? You'd think that they would have a higher incarceration rate. Or you'd think those numbers would be somewhere, right? You'd think you'd be able to see some evidence of it, right? It's not like the Great Firewall of China completely prevents people from accessing Western media. They can use a VPN any day that they want to, post things on Twitter. There are plenty of like, Chinese Twitter accounts that I follow. And so just like if you look at the raw numbers, the United States is the most authoritarian police state that there is. We spend more on our police than any other country except for China spends on the military, right? The United States outspends every other country on police, outspends every other country on prisons. We have the biggest prison population. Um, and like that should really be, I think, one of the things to remember, that any country that we look at is going to be less of an authoritarian police state. And even if there are some policies that are restrictive in one way or another, because to be clear, it's not to say any of these countries are perfect countries, like the material reality for most everyday average people, if you're an average person in China, you're going to go to your job like a normal person. You're going to go to the grocery store like a normal person, right? And you are actually less likely to interact with a police officer in China than you are in the United States. And so like, and that's one of those things, like to bring it back to my experience in the military, where if you don't take the time to recognize that most people in most countries are living very normal lives, um, it's really easy to like forget that, I guess. And then it becomes really easy to just create caricatures of countries in our minds. And that's like our military depends on that. Our military depends on most people in the United States not having an understanding of people in like Iraq or Afghanistan, or Ethiopia now as things are escalating there, or Nigeria, all of these different places. Our military depends on most Americans that get recruited in the military not thinking about the daily lives of people in most countries.
Yeah, because we get really no education, like and even like news, what you would really have to search to get that information, or you would have to have the funds to be able to travel, to be able to have those different experiences, or be in those international communities. It's not something that's easily accessible
Or you could be a
to us.
gamer. Um,
Yeah.
Oh,
because I have a lot of friends from gaming, like all over the world. And when we just chat, you learn so much about other countries that you just couldn't even imagine. Like I was saying something to one of my friends from Denmark, and we were talking about, I'm in Vermont, and I was talking about a homeless person or something. And he went, "You have homeless people?" I was like, "What?" Like, yeah, we don't have that. We just don't. And like, and we're in Vermont. If you'd think that, I was talking like from a inner city or something, but I'm saying homeless people in Vermont, and he's like in Denmark. I'm like, yeah, we don't have homeless people really. I've never really seen that. And he gets paid to go to college, and like, it's,
Yeah. It's stuff like that really just kind of like is really eye-opening for a lot of Americans that like don't have the experience.
yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, like for example, like because the United States is so off the board. Like if you go policy by policy, Joe Biden is politically closer to Boris Johnson than basically any political leader in Europe. But like, think about that. Boris Johnson, like now when we think about Boris Johnson, we separate that from American politics and we're like, oh, Boris Johnson is this far right figure. But the person that was the left-wing candidate theoretically in the presidential election last cycle is somebody that has policies that are nearly identical to like Boris Johnson's policies. Like it's just these types of things that I mean, human beings are really good at segmenting different things in our mind, we're very, very good at not drawing a lot of connections, and sort of comparing our daily life to like other countries. And there's a lot of normalcy that we have. And when we look at other countries, all the assumptions of normalcy go away. Um, and so failing to connect that line that that's normal for them, all of a sudden can kind of change your perspective a lot.
Yeah, and then you go to the media companies, as someone was saying in chat. They're all controlled by money. So you
Yes.
have to turn to independent media, independent news. Um, and then if you get big enough, you start to look like you might be, more of a big media company again. And so it's like you start out and you might have some credibility, and then if you become too popular, now your credibility goes down, and that's kind of like a struggle, right? You know?
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%, like seriously. And then there's obviously the reality where like, I mean, independent media can go anywhere. It can go in any direction because, I mean, like, because by the very nature of being independent, right? You can get everything from, you know, you can get everything from like people who like really go out of their way to study everything before they say anything, all the way to people like Alex Jones. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Totally. I mean, I'm so happy to be working with Rena because she's a researcher and a organized person, and I'm more of a. I heard something once. I can't remember exactly what it is, but and then get kind of the gist. And there are a lot of people that just sort of go out there and just do that only, and then they don't have the someone that can check stuff, check facts.